Assalamu alaikum. I still hear some chit-chatting going on. So the sooner you guys can get quiet, the sooner we can start the program. First request is if I can have everyone move up, please, so that we can feel a little unified. If the sisters in the back can move up, that would be greatly appreciated. There are chairs, you can sit up here as well. And same thing with the brothers, if they can slightly move up. So I just wanted to welcome all of you guys to our Parent Youth Forum. I don't know if you guys are aware of what the subtitle or the subject is or the theme is. Does anyone know? No one knows? No one read the flyer? Okay, something about technology. Okay. For those that are not aware of why we do these Parent Youth Forums, I just wanted to tell you what the purpose of these Parent Youth Forums. We have done a couple right now. This is our third one that we have done with the parents and the youth. And the Parent Youth Forum programs are designed to further create an atmosphere at the masjid where strength and development of not only the individual, but also the family unit and the community as a whole is nurtured and encouraged. So we want the parents and the youth to be unified and interact with each other. And I know the sheikhs are going to make it more discussion-based and try to have you guys involved in the discussion for tonight's topic. So tonight's Parent Youth Forum is defining communication in the age of technology. That's what tonight's theme is. Nowadays, it seems we're worshiping technology and having a stronger attachment to the dunya than we would like to admit it. We're so obsessed with checking our emails, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat constantly, and I will say I'm one of those as well. And all this obsession creates a lack of communication between each other and, more importantly, with the family. Albert Einstein once said, and I'm paraphrasing it because he used a word that's, I wouldn't say it's appropriate to say in front of the kids. I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of people lacking a meaningful life. So tonight, we want to use this forum to bring attention to the issue as well as provide some practical solutions. Our speakers tonight will be our very own Sheikh Mustafa Omar and our guest Sheikh Usman Omarji, and I'm going to hand it over to Sheikh Mustafa for the introduction.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, wa ba'd. So today we're going to be talking about technology and its impact and its effects on our lives. And when it comes to technology, it's pretty clear that technology is all around us. It's everywhere. It's in our phones, it's in our cars, it's in our toaster ovens, it's in our refrigerators, it's on our watches. Technology keeps on advancing, and there's every single time that you're going to have a new service, a new device coming out, you're going to have a new website popping up. And what we need to do is we need to realize that sometimes we live in a paradox, especially for the parents. The parents who may be in a field where they utilize the computer or they utilize technology every single day for what they do. Personally, most of my work is sitting in front of a computer, researching, writing things, answering emails, whatever it is, or messaging, text messages, responding to things. So this is the paradox of what we're going to be discussing tonight, is that we're reliant on technology and there's an aspect where we need it. But at the same time, we need to stop and we need to put the brakes there and say, well, wait a minute. Can technology actually end up doing more harm than good for us? And the answer is yes, it can. And we need to be very open-minded enough to be willing to have some self-introspection and look inside of ourselves and say, well, what are some of those harms? What must we be cautious about when it comes to the technology that we're allowing into our lives? So that's really the goal of this, is to analyze how we've accepted blindly every single thing that's going to be marketed to us, and we're not careful, we don't have a filtering mechanism of what we're going to take and what we're not going to take. And we're going to be talking today in today's lecture about how even a smartphone can actually be something that can ruin your life, in terms of the interactions you have with people, in terms of you being an actual human being. So let me start with a story, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague here. You know, I went to Tustin High School, graduated in class of 99. And what happened is that our school was one of the first schools to get a technology grant from the government. One of the first high schools. I don't know why they gave it to us, but they gave it to us anyways. Like a few $100,000 to install a computer in every single classroom with a T1 internet line connected throughout the entire school. Now this was, at that time, this was something absolutely huge, right? This was amazing. Like to have a T1 line is super fast, and you're gonna have two computers in every single classroom that is open to students anytime they wanna use it. So what ended up happening was there was this perception among the people that if we implement technology in our school, we're moving into the new age. We're going to be aiding students with their intellectual development. Now that we have a computer lab, not even a computer lab, but computers in every single classroom, all of a sudden things are going to change. And today the same thing, people are talking about, if we can get a tablet for every single student in their school. How many of you have a tablet, by the way, that your school gives you? Get a tablet from your school. Right? So some schools are already doing this. Every school has been given a grant. Many schools have been given a grant. You get a tablet. You take it home, play whatever games you want on it, but you get to utilize it in school. And when they analyzed their research after 2 years, what effect did this have in our high school? They realized, according to the network administrator and everyone who is controlling this, they realized that 99% of computer usage was all about games, chatting, and it actually took people away from their own class time because they were just jumping on the computer saying, I'm doing some research, and they actually weren't doing research. But they were tracking all of this to see what they were actually doing. So we need to be very careful about thinking that technology is a solution for everything. Every time a new chip comes out, every time a new program comes out, every time a new device comes out, it's going to all of a sudden make some major difference, a positive change in our lives. But in reality, we see they can be just as detrimental as that positive change. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague who's not been fully introduced. Sheikh Uthman Omarji used to be the Imam of the Masjid in Corona, Norco. Right now he's pursuing his PhD at UC Irvine in education. Just education? In education. And he's someone who's very passionate about this topic. And alhamdulillah, actually, he's someone who keeps me in check too, because I'm always engrossed in technology. I try to utilize it for the best things, but it's very important to have someone who keeps you in check because you know when it's getting out of hand. So without further ado, Uthman Omarji.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So continuing along with what Sheikh Mustafa was saying, it's worth admitting that we all live in a virtual world. I think all of us can now admit that most of our work, or your schoolwork, your entertainment, your communication is done by means of some device. Is that accurate to say, for the most part? So when most of us talk to our family members or friends, is the majority of the time that we converse with our family and friends over technology or in person? Over technology usually, right? It could be text message, could be chatting, right? It could be email, could be something like this, right? Entertainment. How many of us have some sort of a pod, iPod, Zune? No one has a Zune anymore, right? Someone, raise your hand if you have a device that you use to entertain yourself. Tablet or something? Most of us do, right? We have Netflix, we have Hulu, we have cable TV, we have more things you can imagine. So, and most of us work 8 hours a day in front of a computer, or if you have a tablet or a laptop, this is consuming the majority of our time. This does something very interesting to us. This actually has a huge effect on our brain that actually does the same way that these gadgets are being rewired every single year to be faster and to process things differently. Your brain is also being affected. And with the advent of all this technology, I want us to think about something which the previous generations never had the opportunity for. In this day and age, or let's go previously, 100 years ago, if you wanted to be popular, if you wanted to be famous, if you wanted to be cool, you actually had to do something of value. You had to come up with an interesting idea. You had to do some amazing art if you're an artist. You had to write something profound, have it published. Right? It really took effort to become popular or to be famous or to be known to people. But today, with technology, almost every individual on the face of the earth, as boneheaded as they may be, can become very, very famous overnight. Is that right? How do they do this? What do they do? I can't hear you. Vine. Okay, good. Exactly, right? You find these different tools. You can create, like, 6-second clip on Vine? You can do something stupid for 6 seconds, dance around, who knows, spin on your head, and you put it all over the internet, and all of a sudden you become very popular. You could be someone who has no intellect, and you can have a reality TV show and be world famous. You can do whatever you want, as ridiculous as it may be, and you become known all over your school, all over your community, right, all over your country, or possibly all over the world. And in this is something we need to think about. It is a human desire to be liked. It is a human desire to want attention. It is a human desire to seek status. And what technology has given us is an unbridled opportunity to achieve all these things. So your deepest shahawats, your passions, your desires, your wants, technology has made them that much more accessible. And think about it. Just 10 years ago, when you're using technology, it was for the most part passive. You're reading something, you might be sending an email, right? You might be doing something where the end user, it takes time to process that and then to send an individual response. But now things are so interactive. And the people who designed all these tools, so many of us have how many of us have a Facebook? Most of us. How many of us have a Twitter? Probably some of the youth. Many of us have these tools, right? Does anyone pay for these tools? No, they're all free. Now, when they're free, that means that something is going on. You are the product, actually. But they understand that people crave attention, desire, want to be liked so much. They gave you all these tools that to feed your ego. So for those of you who are a little bit older, before there was a like button, Facebook was very different. But now they give you a like button. They give you a +1. They give you a retweet. They give you a, what else do they have? Revine. They give you all these different ways so that people can validate you or to let you know that they like or appreciate what you're doing. And this has fundamentally changed social networking. It has changed technology. And the proof of this is what? How many times, and be honest, when someone puts out a post on Facebook, when someone puts out a tweet, when someone sends out an email, how many minutes before you check to see how many people liked it? Or seconds? Most people do this a lot. I'll just share with you one study at UC Irvine where I go to school. They did a study on Facebook usage of college students, and they found that in this study, the average amount of times that a student would check Facebook in a day is how much? Who can guess? 15? 30? So the average in this study was 26 times a day. And it went as high as like 89 times in a day. But the interesting thing is they're only using it for 1.5 minutes at a time. So it was a short burst of usage, which really tells us about why they're using it, what they're trying to achieve. And a lot of it had to do with the ego. You want to either know what other people are doing, which is why half the users use it, or when you actively use it, you want to check to see how many people are speaking about what you're writing. How many people are retweeting it, are sharing it, are liking it, are commenting on it. And that's what usually makes us so excited. That's why when you get these notifications, how many of us wait for the whole day to check our phone? Or do we check as soon as there's a notification? As soon as there's a notification, usually. You get an email, right? You get a tweet, you get a Facebook message, something, you check it right away. So fundamentally, the people who designed this know that we have an ego that wants to be fed. And they are giving us these things to make us repeat users, to go back to it over and over and over and over. And it has gotten to a point that many times now, when people think about why they're going to do something, what they think about is, how am I going to share this with other people? How am I going to let other people know that I did this? So it's not enough that I went to Disneyland, but I gotta take a selfie so everyone knows that I went. It's not good enough that I saw a celebrity, I gotta go and take a picture with them so I can tell all my friends. So now the purpose is not to inherently do the act. It's to tell other people you were doing the act. And now, just like Sister Samina mentioned, this has become worship, actually. It's worship of technology. That it has become almost like your purpose in life, or people's purpose in life. And this really asks the fundamental question that, aren't we supposed to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Isn't our day supposed to revolve around what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us? Not how much people want from us, or how much we want to show people about our lives. So this is what I want to kind of put the pretext as this conversation. And then I want to mention something else. There is a new hot term in the industry that many adults probably know about. It's called mindfulness. How many of you have heard of mindfulness? Mindfulness. Some of the adults have heard of this term. It is becoming very, very popular because people are realizing, non-Muslims, that most of us are not living mindfully in this world. We're almost like robots. We're almost just mindlessly going through our day. We don't think about what we're doing. We don't enjoy the moments of our day. We don't savor everything we do. And this is one of the root reasons why, as a society, we are the most blessed society when it comes to wealth, when it comes to technology. But Americans are also the most depressed people in the world. Isn't that strange? That the more money, the most prosperous country in the world, the most technologically advanced country in the world is the most depressed? There is a correlation. There is something to say that there's one of them is causing the other. And if you think about it, you will realize that people are not happy with this lifestyle, despite the fact that they can't get out of it. It is like crack cocaine. You go to someone who's addicted to drugs, and you might say, I hate that I do this. I don't like that I have to take heroin, or that I do cocaine, or that I smoke marijuana, or that I smoke cigarettes, or that I drink alcohol. I just can't stop. That's what an addictive behavior is. And technology has become something very, very addictive to us. It's cheap, it's free usually, or we think it's free, and it's something we can't get out of. This is why, subhanAllah, even right before the talk, how many of us had our phones out? How many of us walk around the street with our phone in our hand, or walk around school? And you check your pocket, you think that it's buzzing, but really it wasn't. Yes? You think, oh yeah, I got another message. Oh, my phone wasn't even in my pocket. It was a false vibration of my thigh. It's something's happening to us. And I want to talk about this concept in Islam called, we don't give the term mindfulness, but the same notion that in Islam we want to live in the moment. We want to enjoy and benefit from every second of our day. And this is exactly why we have this term, if you look in the classical books, they always talk about this concept of hudur, present, to be present in what you're doing. And technology often takes you away from the present. It makes you think about the future, or it makes you think about the past. And I'll give an example of where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to think about the present and we don't, and how we don't enjoy our life. So the premise of today's talk was how technology affects our communication. I'll argue no, technology actually fundamentally affects our happiness in life. It affects who we are as human beings and how we savor the world that we live in. So most of us, when we eat, alhamdulillah, Allah has given us the ability and the intellect to have technology. It is a blessing in many ways. But it can also be a curse. So how many of us have a microwave? Everyone? I'm sure many of the people who cook in this room are very happy. They have a freezer. You can cook food, freeze it, take it out quickly, throw it in the microwave and eat it. Instant food. And we decided we live in a capitalist society. We want to be very efficient. So how many of us, when we eat a meal, are trying to multitask? So what do we do when we eat? What do you do? Raise your hand and answer. What do you do when you eat? Yeah. You're on your phone. What else? Good? You're watching TV. What else? You eat. That's because we spoke about this last Sunday. Sunday school students represent. But really, if you think about it, many of us, we think, oh, eating is simply something I gotta do, but I'm actually not going to eat and enjoy my food. I'm gonna watch TV, I'm gonna talk on the phone, I'm going to text, I'm gonna do something else, work on my laptop, cheeseburger in one hand on the mouse. But Allah tells you in the Quran something fundamentally different. He says in Surah Abasa, فَلْيَنظُرِ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَىٰ طَعَامِهِ. What does that mean? Tell mankind, tell people need to look at their food. Why? Well, there's a number of reasons. Number one, if you were to look at your food, you'd probably stop eating half the junk you put in your mouth. You would look and see something and say, this is really probably not good for my body. But when you're sitting there looking at some other screen and you're chomping down food, or you're on a phone and you're just trying to get through the task, you're not thinking. You're mindlessly eating. So Allah says, look at your food. Why? He continues, أَنَّا صَبَبْنَا الْمَاءَ صَبًّا ثُمَّ شَقَقْنَا الْأَرْضَ شَقًّا. He walks you through a process to think about. You look at your food. If it's real food, you should look at it. You're going to smell it. You're going to think about where it came from. You're going to actually begin to appreciate the blessing of food. And then you're actually going to enjoy every bite because you're focused and mindful about what you're doing. But here, technology, whether it be a microwave dinner, which is technology, whether it be that you're engaged in something else, has taken you away from savoring that moment. And why does Allah say to look at your food? He tells you in the end of the verses, مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ. He didn't make food for you of different colors, flavors, textures, for no reason. He did it so you could enjoy it. مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ. Just for your enjoyment. Enjoy your life and enjoy your meal. But your technology has taken this away from you. It's robbed you of something fundamentally valuable to your humanity. So maybe we want to talk about solutions. You want to add anything? Solutions is, as a family or as an individual, try your best. When you do each thing in your day, be focused and mindful and present in that action. When I eat my meal, I am eating my meal. I was created that I have to consume food, and I'm actually going to enjoy that moment of consumption. Now, it doesn't mean that you live to eat. It doesn't mean, so people often say, do you eat to live or do you live to eat? This is a false question. It's neither one or the other. It's a blend of both. We eat because we need it, but we're also supposed to enjoy that. And that is really one of the fundamental joys of life, is actually to have good food. And those of you who unfortunately have to, on the run, eat drive-through, you know how horrible it is. And the youngsters who think that junk food is good, just wait a few years until your brain develops more, you realize it's really junk. You'll see it. When I was a kid, I used to think, oh man, Taco Bell is great. Now you couldn't pay me to eat Taco Bell. But think about it, this is just food. Being mindful of food and recognizing how technology could mess that up. There's other things as well. How many of you here like to sleep? Sleep is something that human beings, they enjoy. And Allah tells you as well that He made the night as a moment for you to rest and to enjoy that rest. It's a blessing to be able to sleep. This is why when people are being tortured in prison, they put them in perpetual light, 24 hours a day, to be in a place so it throws off your biological clock. It's torture. And we don't realize this, but we invite this torture onto ourselves at times. How? When you use technology, how many of us have a TV in our bedroom? Some of us? How many of us sleep with our phones plugged in near our heads? How many of us have a tablet in our bedroom? In a recent study, they said 80 to 90% of teenagers, and obviously adults will be in this category, they would use some technological device not too long before falling asleep. So how many of us in this room use some electronic device within the last hour of our night? Almost everyone. And this study recently came out and it said that this is actually causing a fundamental problem in our sleep cycles. It's destroying our sleep cycles. So you might have a kid, or you might be that person yourself, who just can't fall asleep at night. How many of us have trouble falling asleep at night? Some of us? They said that a lot of the cause of this is simply because the use of a device that's light emitting, like a TV, like a phone, like a tablet, just being exposed to that before going to bed affects the body somehow. And they haven't exactly pinpointed why, but they know that those people have severe problems falling asleep. They said between 60 minutes and 120 minutes, so between 1 and 2 hours, that your body cannot fall asleep. So we're unconsciously torturing ourselves by doing this. And we don't think about it. So we like sleep and we destroy our sleep. We like food, we don't enjoy our food. Or you might think about communication. Recently I was talking to someone, and the child was being told that you should do your best to speak to your parents more and to have time for communication at home. So the kid's response was what? Says, you're telling me to do this. I cannot, when I'm at home, I tell my mom or dad, hey mom, hey dad. And they're sitting there on their phones. Mom, not paying attention. So the kid goes, I walk to my phone, I text my mom, and she's like, yes son? This is not a problem of children only. It's a problem of the adults. We are modeling this behavior. And that is something very strange. That parents complain, my kids have poor communication skills now. My children don't communicate with me the way that the last generation did. They don't like to look at people in the eye. Well, how is it being modeled for them? And we need to really, really, really have a solution where we realize that this is actually destroying our relationships. I remember when I was an engineer, and again, maybe we should preface this, me and Sheikh Mustafa both have tech backgrounds. I have an electrical engineering background, and I spent 4 years of my life in cell phone design, and then Mustafa was a computer programmer. So we're not the typical people you might think that speak bad about technology because we're scared of technology. It was a part of our lives. We realized that there is some value in it. But we also realized the consequences of it. So when I first got my work, they gave me a free cell phone. And so I thought to myself, great, I don't have to pay for a cell phone bill anymore. And my work, they gave me a laptop. I was like, great, I don't have to buy a new laptop. But then I thought for a minute, I said, you know what, this is being used to enslave me. When I would go to work before, I worked from 9 to whatever it is, 6 or 7. When I leave the work, I go home and I spend time with my family. But now they've essentially said, no. When we want to call you at 8 o'clock, we're going to call you. There's going to be a conference call at 10 o'clock. You can be on that. You have a laptop. You can work at night and you can work in the morning. You can work on the weekends. And we don't think about these things. We are being enslaved by the technology. We think it's liberation, but it's enslavement. And then sometimes we voluntarily do it now. So no, our company doesn't need to do it. I'm going to go and buy a device that's going to keep me plugged in all day long. I'm going to get a laptop so I can always be working or always be playing. And then we wonder that why are our relationships deteriorating? Why is it that it's so hard for me to get pulled away from this and my kid to get pulled away from that? And really the solution to this is saying, there are hours, this is off limits. The phone, the tablet, the TV, it's just going to be off from time X to time Y. And it ideally should be from pretty much when you come home to almost when you sleep. That would be the ideal solution. For those of you who can't do this, try to gradually do it. So you know what, right now, I'm on it for 2-3 hours a day. It's much more than that. I'm going to try to cut down an hour. I'm going to try to get good at that, proficient, and then cut down 2 hours. And then cut down to eventually where it's not really a part of my life. But we have to systematically think about how to eliminate the junk from our life. Now, I'm not saying don't use it for your work and don't use it for some entertainment. But you almost have to set a clock. So an action item. There are actually apps out there. You can download the app on your phone that will log the amount of times that you have used different apps. Tells you how long you've been on the phone. It tells you how many times that you've actually swiped into your phone. And begin to see if you can cut down on that. So if you're using it 90 times a day, you're logging into your phone, you're swiping to get onto it. See if, I'm going to cut this down. I'm not going to check my email. I'm going to turn off auto notifications on my social media. I'm going to turn off my email instead of it being automatically updated on my phone every 3 hours or every 4 hours, every 5 hours. I'm only going to check it certain times of the day when I have to check it. This is an addiction. This is an addiction that has to be broken. It's not going to happen by wishful thinking. You literally have to force yourself to do this. And I know this sounds radical, but when someone has an addictive problem, it really requires this type of work. And I apologize if I'm coming off as being harsh. I really do. But we are seeing how fundamentally people are not enjoying their lives. And another study that just came out, so some people, they usually say, oh, I don't post on Facebook. I'm not one of those active users. I'm a passive user. How many of us are passive users? Who don't actively post, use it more to see what others are doing. They found that those people who regularly look at what others are doing have a much higher chance of becoming depressed. And now we're beginning to see the linkage. Why is that? Because does anyone go on Facebook and say, you know what? And they start saying, do you usually say the bad things happening in your life? Or do you usually boast about the good things that are happening, or your friends? What are they doing? Do you take a picture of yourself in the worst clothes you have or in the best clothes you have? Do you take a picture when you're at the nicest place or when you're at the ugliest place? Right? We usually try to show the best that we have. Now, for those of you who are passive users, you go on. Say, I just want to see what Aisha is doing. What is Muhammad doing? What is Ahmed doing? And you go and you say, oh man, they went to this amazing restaurant and they're a foodie and they just sent me their super duper amazing cheeseburger. Oh man, I wish I was there. Oh, they went to this dessert place and they have like this quadruple scoop ice cream sundae with who knows what on top. And then all these people are saying, oh, I wish I was there, and oh, save me some, and which restaurant, and I'll be there. This actually makes you feel worse because you want to be there. And you're like, man, my life sucks. I'm at home. I had to eat like dryers out of the freezer, right? It's like all crusty and has like ice forming around it. And this person's going to eat this like high-class great food. And then you compare. And you might go to your husband or your wife or your mom or your dad. It's like, hey, Baba, can we go there too? And then your dad is like, we don't want to waste our money. And then you think, man, we're poor, right? And you don't realize it, but all these things go through your mind, and you think those people have it better than we do. That person's husband is so much more generous and loving and caring to his wife. This social comparison is so detrimental to our life. And this is a confirmed psychological fact. I study this for a living, actually. Social comparison. That people, when they look at what others are doing, and those people are showing that they're doing better, it negatively affects us in ways that we don't imagine. And the only cure for that, there's no other cure, I'm telling you. There's no magical pill. It is to cut the usage. I am going to advocate, and I'll let Imam Mustafa chime in. He might disagree, and others might. The only true solution to like this cycle of self-abuse is almost to cut yourself off to the best of your ability. I think I'm one of the only people still in America who doesn't have a social media account. I never have, and I hope I never will. And I love my life for that. I really do. I'm not saying I have a wonderful, perfect life. I have all the problems that you all probably have, right? I have trouble raising my kids, right? We have, my wife and I, we get into arguments like any other spouse do. It's part of life. But at least I'm able to spend time with them. I'm actually able to look at them in the face, actually able to enjoy my meals with them. When I want to see a friend of mine, either we meet in person or we're talking on the phone at least one-on-one. It's not that we're airing our conversations publicly on Facebook. It's intimate. There's intimate relationships with everyone in my life because that's what I choose to have. I'd rather have 5 meaningful friends, and honestly I have about 2 probably. I think Imam Mustafa and maybe Sheikh Jamal are the only 2 people I regularly communicate with, and my classmates at school. But that's fine with me. It's fine. Because when you have 500 Facebook friends, guess what? They're not really your friends. When you have 1,000 or 2,000 people following you, they're not really caring for you. Half of them are trolls, and you know this. They're only out there to kind of say negative things. And when you realize, and you say, you know, I'm going to be mindful, and I'm going to be different. A rebel with a cause. I'm not just going to do what everyone else is doing. I'm going to think and do something unique. And I'm going to say, you know, yeah, I like it. And I'm enjoying my life. Try it. It's a test. Let's test it out. See if 1 month you can deactivate. Or 1 month you say, I'm only going to check these things once a day. Either when I wake up or maybe after I come home from school or work. That's it. And see if you can tame yourself and see how much better your life gets. And Allah is telling you in the Quran to enjoy those moments so you know there's almost a promise from Allah that you're going to get better in your life. So, are you guys up for the challenge? Or are you guys like, man, this guy is too hardcore for us, we can't handle him?
All right, let me chime in right there.
All right, the moderation is about to come in.
This is what I recommend. If you're not up for the challenge yet, and you think this is crazy, this is going too extreme or something, like Sheikh Uthman was saying, download a program called Rescue Time. Okay, it's called Rescue Time. You can write it down right now if you want to. This is the only time you can take your phone out. It's probably out already anyways. Okay, it's called Rescue Time, and the reason why they called it that program is because you're trying to rescue time back in your life that you've lost. And what this will do actually is you install it on your computer, you install it on all your computers, all your accounts, you install it on your cell phone. And what it's going to do is going to send you a weekly report of your usage at the end of the week. How much social media did you actually use on all your devices? How many times were you sitting on YouTube? How many videos were you watching? And it'll categorize it for you. How much time did you spend on entertainment in your computer use and cell phone use? How much time did you spend on productivity applications? How much time did you spend on socializing with other people? How much time did you spend playing games? How much time did you actually spend doing some research on, I don't know, some Wikipedia or encyclopedia or something like that? Go look at your own statistics so that you can actually analyze your own life for what it really is. And then you might be more convinced that maybe it's time to take on a challenge like, you know what? I'm going to limit myself to checking once a day. Just start with that. Just try to start with that if you can't do more than that. And if you can, maybe we'll do a fasting from social media challenge during Ramadan or something. See how long you can go. We did a Fajr challenge recently. Right? Alhamdulillah, we had a few winners there who can come for Fajr the most times. And one girl actually came up to me. She's here somewhere. She actually came up to me and said, you know what? Initially, I was only doing this Fajr challenge just because it was a lot of money, you know, we were giving out money. She said, subhanAllah, she told me that it changed her entire life. It changed her connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you know what? Modifying your technology use, modifying your social media habits to whatever extent you're willing to do so, it can change your life, it can change your family, and it can change your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even though I do have a Facebook account where Sheikh Uthman doesn't, what he's saying, take it very seriously. Take it very seriously and try to at least start critiquing yourself and realizing that most probably you're one of the people who's going overboard. Right?
Yeah, the norm is to be, like, so when people say like you're the average, so let's say someone's like, well, I'm just average, I only check it 26 times a day. Right? That means that the normal person is just out of control. And that's something we have to look at. So we're not gauging ourselves by the average. Right? A few other things to throw in here. Oftentimes people think that you can actually do multiple things at once. I want to really take this moment to say, there's no such thing as multitasking, by the way. It's brain science, neuroscience, tells you your brain is not capable of simultaneously doing 2 different tasks or more. So you cannot text and drive. It's not possible. Right? It's worse than drinking and driving, just by statistics. More chance of killing someone while texting and driving than drinking and driving. But the reason I'm saying this is that it actually it ruins the way whatever you're focusing on. It takes so much time for you to actually get back into finishing that task. So many of us are inefficient at work. We're inefficient at our homework. Right? We're inefficient at a lot of the tasks that we do. And we wonder why. So if you think about this for a minute, imagine that you're reading something, right? You have your homework assignment or you have something at work that you're doing and you're reading it. And then you get a beep on your phone or an email notification or anything else. When you stop to go and look at that, and then even if it takes you 10 seconds, you looked up and it said like, whatever, like, I'll be home in 10 minutes. Someone's telling you that. The time it takes for you to then get that out of your brain, get back to what you're doing, refocus, is so time consuming that you're gonna spend double, triple, quadruple the amount of time finishing your task. So if people really want to have free time, we always crave free time. I think this is like the lost treasure of this generation. Hardly anyone says that I have free time. You could be 10 or you could be 50. We don't have free time anymore. But again, we've brought it onto ourselves unknowingly. So if you really want to have free time, I am not going to multitask. When I do something, I'm going to do that one thing, finish it, and then move on. Because my brain cannot do it. Allah made me this way. It's not about intelligence. And I'll give you the simple example. You have a memory. Your memory, we call it working memory, is comprised of what your senses are being exposed to. And you draw a picture in your mind, and then you can actually hold a certain amount of information. As soon as you try to multitask, most of that is being dumped out, it's being replaced with something else, and that's being dumped out and going back to the first thing. So whatever you try to do in the first place, you're starting from scratch, essentially. And this is really why it's so detrimental, and we should really think about it. If we really are people who believe not only in the guidance of our faith, but we believe also in these scientific studies, which you should be cautious of, but they're also confirming that you're going to be very, very, very inefficient. It's not going to be beneficial to you. One more thing I wanted to add on this has to do with creativity. People don't like to be bored. Being bored is not a bad thing. I want to make that very clear. So usually what people do is when you have a free moment, if you go to a restaurant to meet a friend, you go to a coffee shop, you're at the bus stop, you're in between classes in school, you don't want 5 minutes of idleness. So what do? You consume yourself with something, right? That is really, really detrimental to your own creativity, number one, and number two, to your self-evaluation. People who don't allow themselves to be just not thinking about anything are not creative, and they're very short-sighted when it comes to their own planning. So to think about your introspection or evaluation or reflecting over your day, that can't occur. So it's okay. Embrace quietness. It's okay if no one is saying something for a minute in a conversation. Awkward silence it's not awkward. It should be golden silence. When you're sitting at a booth waiting for someone in a coffee shop, sit silently. Just think for a minute. Think about your life. Think about what you want to do later in life. Reflect over something of value. Or you know what, even if you don't think about even if you're just spaced out, it is better for you than to say, you know what, I'm going to quickly go and look at something. And I'm going to say this, it's not only things that are not valuable, even something like Quran or nasheeds or something about, don't always be plugged into that either. So I'm not advocating people replace the iPod music with the hip-hop songs or whatever else you're listening to with Quran. That's not the solution. Yes, listen to Quran. But even religiously using technology can be detrimental. Sometimes have time for nothing. It's me time. It's me with my thoughts, and that's it. And then you'll be shocked at you'll come up with amazing ideas that you did not think of before, because your brain is working on it in the subconscious. But if you never give it a break, right, it's gonna go haywire. Those of you guys who like computers, imagine you're like overclocking your brain all day long. It's not gonna perform well. You have to have a break. It needs to just shut off and just be idle. And that's, again, part of enjoying life. You're not going to be stressed. There's nothing to think about. You're not thinking about what am I going to do next, and then tomorrow. You're not just over-analyzing everything. You can just kind of relax. Alhamdulillah. Breathe. Look. Look outside. Look at the trees. Look at the sky. Look at the clouds. Look at the greenery. And that is something that is a moment to savor. Smell a flower. Say subhanallah. It's amazing how we say, we sing words of praise when some new device comes out. Oh, did you know the new iPhone 6 can do this and it can do that? And we just go on as if it's the most greatest invention in the world. Look at a tree. Look at a flower. What is more impressive as a creation, a flower or a computer? It's a flower. But we're missing life. We're missing life. So Allah says in the Quran, He talks about this, that He said, خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ بِغَيْرِ عَمَدٍ تَرَوْنَهَا, that He created the earth, the sky, without any pillars that you see. وَأَلْقَى فِيهَا رَوَاسِيَ أَن تَمِيدَ بِكُمْ, and then He made the mountains as well. وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ, and we put there forth all types of animals. وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً, and then we sent rain down from the heavens. فَأَنبَتْنَا فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ زَوْجٍ كَرِيمٍ. Allah describes, He's telling you, these are all the things Allah has made. And then what does He say? هَذَا خَلْقُ اللَّهِ. This is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَأَرُونِي مَاذَا خَلَقَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ. Show me what others have made. Allah's challenging you. Stop being impressed by all these silly gadgets. Wait 5 years ago when you first got your phone, you thought it was pretty amazing, right? Would any of you use the first iPad today? Generation 1. How many would use a 2G cell phone? How many of you use a 386 computer if you even know what that is? How many of the kids here know what a 386 computer is? One of you. How many of the adults know what a 386 computer is? Or a 486? Few of you, right? Those who have some gray hair. We marvel at things, and then we look back later and say, this is nonsense. I would never touch this. It's slow, it doesn't work well, it wasn't well designed. Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ever have to create something and say, you know what? That tree, we didn't make it very well, we're going to make 2.0. Pine trees 2.0. Grass 3.0. Here's an update. We didn't make it properly. Everything He made perfectly for you to enjoy, to smell, to touch, to live with. And we miss out on this because we think that these lights and these gadgets are far better. There's something fundamentally wrong with our scales of what is beautiful and what is not. So I'm simply asking people to reflect. Try to get out as a family. Not to go and watch a movie. Go out to the mountains. Go to a river. Go to a lake and see what it does for your nafs. If you're married, take your spouse to watch the sunset or the sunrise. It'll be more enjoyable than watching Netflix. Be more enjoyable than doing anything else, because this is the creation of Allah. And then He told us why He made this. إِنَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. Allah, when He told us that He made the sunrise and the sunset, He answered why. Because He knows that which is in your hearts. He knows you like it. He knows you're going to enjoy it. So enjoy it. Enjoy it. Don't lock yourself in rooms. Don't lock yourself in places that shield you from the beauty of Allah's creation. This is the real technology, if you think about it. It's the real deal. All the rest of the stuff is really, it's cheap. It looks cool today. You're going to laugh at it tomorrow. You're going to laugh at it tomorrow. Want to add anything? So I want to open it up. I know we've been talking a lot. To questions, to comments, to criticisms because I'm crazy, which is fine. If I'm too hardcore, I want to hear it. Mm-hmm. 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 Good question. Excellent question. Okay, so let's answer that, and then we'll get to the second one. So you want to start?
Let me start with that. So it's a good question. Is that if you pile up all your notifications at the end of the day, doesn't it take the same amount of time to answer them if you were to answer them throughout the day? Okay, I'll tell you something. I'm a person who suffers from email overload because of what I do. And the thing is, what I noticed is that if I respond to every email, I respond to every text message as soon as it comes, and this is what I used to do to everyone, regardless of who's sending it to me, you know what happens? Is that person sends me a response immediately back, right? Had I waited till the end of the day, they're not going to be able to respond back in time. So what happens, if I send a response back, they send a response back again. I send a response back, they send a response back. So now if I had 50 messages in a day, and I had 100 emails in a day, which is what I average about 120, 150 emails a day. If I respond back to every single one of those in the morning, within 1 hour, like 80% of the people will respond back, and I have to respond again. Now I have a full box again. So no, not necessarily. I would say from that angle, not necessarily, because you're actually increasing the amount of messages that you have. That's why when it comes to email, by the way, in case you're a person who's very busy, I recommend an app called Boomerang. And what you can actually do is you can schedule your response to go out at whatever time you want. So when I respond to my emails, I say this email is going to go out at midnight tonight. So they cannot respond back to me because they're going to be sleeping and I'm going to be sleeping, right? I wake up fresh in the morning, and that's when the email got responded to, but I don't get to see it anymore. It already got sent out. So that's what I would argue.
Let me add to that, and I did mention this. So though there is a fundamental difference. If you're doing all of your emails in one shot, you're focused on that task. So your memory will be on the task. It'll complete it far faster than when you're multitasking in the day. So the email pops up, you respond to it, you get back to what you're doing. The email pops up. That is far less efficient from a neuroscience perspective. So there are multiple reasons why that's not ideal. Number two, I think this leads to a bigger issue. That is, there's issue of haste that we have, al-ajala as we call it, and it's written classically. There used to be a time where we were okay with not having an instantaneous answer for something. And now, because of technology, we become so impatient and so uncomfortable with not having an immediate response that we get nervous. And that's a very, very dangerous thing. So it's good to teach people sabr and for you to have your own patience. That, you know what? There is something that needs to be done. Someone needs a response, but they can wait. No one is going to die if that email gets back to them 8 hours later, or the text message. And look at the proof of this. What do we normally do? You call someone on the phone, or this is what people often do. You send someone an email. They don't respond in 10 minutes. You pick up the phone and you call them. They don't answer the phone. You send them a text message. You can't wait, so you have to go through this process of you're wasting your time, you're wasting that person's time, and then we wonder why is no one getting anything done, right? So there's so many reasons why it's probably not healthy to do that. These just might be some of them, wallahu alam, right? Second part you had? It's a very good question. I think I would say, let's separate between work matters, where you might be required by your employer to respond in certain. You can't tell your coworkers that I only check my email at 8 o'clock in the morning and 4:30. Obviously, right? That's not going to be possible. But at least for social interactions, that could be one, and two for let's say personal just entertainment, right? Even when it comes to work, though, it does have the same effect that Imam Mustafa was mentioning. That if you respond every second, you're only going to add your own workload. And if you respond maybe every hour and a half, you can just set certain limits. Everyone is their own judge as to the nature of their work. Is that life and death, right? Is it the difference between closing a deal and not closing a deal? And I think we can all use our own intellect to determine what is a fair rate of response. So there's no such thing as a magical answer that I would give or feel comfortable saying everyone should apply unilaterally. Use your own discretion and judgment, wallahu alam, right? But maybe to add to that, when you use the word advancing, I think this is a dangerous usage of it, because not to pick on you at all, I apologize, maybe I should use that word. It's maybe not appropriate word, because that notion that we're not advancing, I think, is inaccurate. So yes, we are harnessing and using this properly, but we're using it in a way that is also healthy for our nafs. Now think about this, in this society, in a capitalist society, there's no emphasis on your spiritual health. They don't care about even your physical health half the time, right? This is why we have fast food. This is why we have all these opportunities to do things faster so we can go back to making money faster. It's an efficiency system. And this is not why we live. So the Muslim says, look, my purpose is not to maximize my portfolio, or my nest egg. My purpose is not simply to be this efficient robot, but it's actually to savor and enjoy my life. So I make a little less money in doing it. I lost that on some deals, but I actually enjoyed my kids. I actually enjoyed, my wife. I actually enjoyed my friends. One of my non-Muslim coworkers, again, in the tech company I worked at, he advised me when I first got married, non-Muslim. He's like, you're a young guy, you're a young engineer. He's like, don't chase after moving up the corporate ladder. He's like, I've lost my wife and my kids trying to do this. He's like, he's rich. He's like, my life sucks. He said that to me. He's like, do what's important, do your obligations, but never sacrifice those that matter more to you. So I think as long as you have that in the back of your mind, that I'm never going to allow the people who matter to me to take a back seat to this capitalist society, then you'll be fine. Wallahu alam. Right?
Actually, I had a professor in school in UCI. He was actually in charge of the department for speeding up computer processors, the CPU. He was from Princeton, and this is like what he would teach is he would teach the class on how to actually speed up a CPU in terms of its hertz and make it faster. So he would actually add at the end of every single email he would send out to his students a statement by Mahatma Gandhi, who has some wise statements. He said, "There's more to life than increasing its speed." And he said, we asked him, I said, "Why do you keep putting that?" He says, "The reason why is because this is when you do this as a living and you live in an environment where you have to increase the speed of a computer, you have to increase the speed of every single device at a certain level. It's paced, basically, for marketing reasons and everything. You start thinking that life is all about just making things faster. But there's so much more to life than just going faster and faster. There's more important things in life. So sometimes you want to slow down. Sometimes you want to hit the brakes and start appreciating everything that you have. So it's very, very important what Sheikh Uthman was saying about multitasking. Right? If some of you remember when the first iPhones came out, you could not multitask on an iPhone. Does anyone remember that? The first iPhones, you could not switch apps. You actually go from one app and it basically closes one and goes to the other one. That's the way it used to be. And then when they brought in the threading mechanism, it falsely makes it look like you're switching between apps, but it was not an actual, it did not actually have the ability to switch. What it did was it would suspend one app and open up another one because the computer processor within the phone didn't have the potential capacity to actually switch back and forth. So it made it seem like you were doing that, so it made it look like you're actually more productive, but actually you were not. And this is exactly what he's talking about. Your brain is the same way. If you think that you're being more productive by doing this and then doing that and doing that, you actually decrease the productivity of each and every single action you're doing significantly enough that you're actually being unproductive than if you had focused on each and every single task separately. It's not about necessarily tunnel vision, right? If you have a problem where somebody tries, something important happens, and you can't even focus, you can't drop what you're doing, and you can't deal with that and come back, that's not a good characteristic. So you don't want to be so extreme where you have a one-track mind and you can't stop yourself. But what you want to do is you want to be to a point where you're able to be focused enough that you can actually concentrate on what you're doing. You want to be focused enough that you can have a conversation with someone, and I'm in the middle of my conversation, and a text message starts shaking on my watch, and I don't stop my conversation with you, and I look at my text message and say, "What's going on?" And it messes up our conversation. And you're looking at me and saying, "Man, this guy can't even finish a statement, and he has to go and check his watch or check his phone or whatever it is." That's not a good thing, because you want to finish a statement with the person. You want to have them feel like they actually have some value in your eyes as well. So that's very important. If you're at work, maybe it's a different thing. You're talking to your employee, your coworker, and this is urgent. So this may be something urgent. But when you're outside of the work environment, talking with people, regular human interaction has to be there. All right, so that's what we're talking about.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead. SubhanAllah. Interesting. So amazingly, subhanAllah, it takes someone to die before we say maybe we should stop using this. But people's spirits and their nafs is dying every day, but we don't really even think about it, right? It's incredible, right? Go ahead, you have something to add.
Can you imagine if your surgeon was texting? Right? Like in the middle of just cutting you open. Oh, hold on, let me just respond to this thing real quick. Can you imagine? Right? But the thing is, we look at it from that perspective that this person's physical health could be damaged. What about your relationships? What about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What about your own heart? This is what Shaykh Uthman is saying. Sorry, Omar.
Oh, it wasn't a question. He was making a statement about how pretty much someone almost died because the employee was trying to multitask with the medication and the phone and improperly filled the medication. So I think what he just mentioned about the salah really is probably the crux of the matter. I think the easiest way to diagnose yourself, say, are we suffering from overstimulation and over-addiction, is really to look at our salah. I think almost unilaterally, I was reading even just today, that there was a time in our history where people they'd be praying, an earthquake would occur, the building would fall down, and they didn't notice it because they have concentration in their prayer. Another statement, someone was praying, the house caught on fire, they put out the fire, and he didn't notice, he was in his salah. These are real people we had in our history.
Let me throw two more stories out there. We just covered this in our CIS class. Another companion, he was out watching for an enemy force to come in case he was coming through. Kenny, you were there, right? Yeah, that's why he's happy. Alhamdulillah. So, someone shot an arrow at him. And he got hit by an arrow, and he was reciting, which surah, Kenny? Who remembers which surah? No CIS students here? Y'all need to join CIS, by the way. So he was reciting Surah Kahf. And he said, I didn't want to interrupt my recitation. So he got hit by an arrow, and he kept on going. Pulled out the arrow. He got hit by a second arrow, he kept on going. When he got hit by the third arrow, that's when he said, you know what, I think I might, if I end up dying, then I'm going to let the whole Muslim army down because someone's going to come and, attack us. So he's like, I think I better stop my salah now. Can you imagine? One guy, he needed his leg, this is companions, well, he needed his leg amputated. He didn't say, let me drink some whiskey because there's no Vicodin, there's no, some kind of, what's that poppy seed thing? It's like it's from heroin. Opium. No, not opium. The one that you use for medicine. The what? In the army, man. Penicillin. No, anyways. All right. So, morphine. Thank you. Morphine. Yeah, it comes from poppy seed. I took a class on drugs in the brain at UCI. All right, so anyways, something like that. I mean, this is a guy who needed his leg amputated. He said, you know what, let me get into my prayer. And once you see that I'm deep into my salat at nighttime, and you see that I'm really deep in my prayer and I'm focusing 100%, just go ahead and come and cut off the leg. I won't even feel it. They cut off the leg and they ask, are you okay? Is everything okay? They cauterized it. And he's like, I didn't even notice. Did you guys do it already? He's like, yeah, it's already done. Can you imagine what salah used to be like? SubhanAllah.
So, I mean, with that, you just think about, why do we suffer from these problems? And this is not only a technological problem, but it's really as to what we value in our life. It's amazing. We say, Allahu Akbar. You're starting your prayer by saying, Allah is greater than in essentially everything. But usually, at least for me, at a certain time in my life, when I say Allah is greater than, the TV shows that I watched came into my head, right? The songs I was listening to would come into my head, and all these begin to consume your mind. And then we complain that our salah really doesn't help us a lot. We don't see concentration in our salah. So we need to really think about what is it we feed our nafs, whether it be TV, whether it be music, whether it be social media, and to say, if we really want to enjoy what Allah wants us to enjoy, then we have to fundamentally change our habits. We have to change, so try simple things. Well, before you pray, what are you engaged in? Is there a downtime that you give yourself to let your brain just kind of dump everything out? You can't be watching TV and then be like, let me pray real fast. Allahu Akbar. You think you're going to go into some sort of mode of concentration? No, you can't. When anyone is going to perform, someone is going to give a public speech, someone's going to go and play a sport, someone's going to actually do something important, they usually try to get into some sort of a zone. They might meditate, they might do something. We're about to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then we think that we're just able to turn this magical switch on, right? The iPod is in your ear. Hold on, I got to pray. Put it down. Allahu Akbar. It's not going to happen. So if you want to enjoy your salah, you want it to actually have value for you. You actually want to be able to remember what you're saying. How many times we pray, we're like, what surahs did I just recite? Because it's just too much happening. You're thinking about what you're going to do after salah. You're thinking about the shows that you're watching. You're going to think of just too much stuff. Slow down at times. And this is why I think about the wisdom that we have in adhan. There's time between the adhan and the iqamah. There might be a sunnah prayer. Also, you can kind of get yourself into the mindset. You do it, make wudu, you pray sunnah, right? You sit down, you wait for salah. All of it puts you into a calm state of being. And we're all trying to cheat the system out of efficiency. So when we're at work, you're in your cubicle, you're somewhere, you say, okay, I'm typing away. All right, I'll be right back, I'm going to pray. You step out into the corridor, or you go into your cubicle. You're not going to enjoy your salah. So really, you have to radically think about your daily lifestyle. Do you fit salah into your routine, or do you fit your routine around your salawat? It's fundamentally different. And look, no one can say I'm busy. Smokers take like 10-minute breaks. People do all sorts of nonsense. People are inefficient all day long. You can take the time, unless you're a surgeon, you're not going to step out in the middle of your surgery perhaps, right? But most of us have the ability to take the time to slow down, get into a mindset, enjoy our prayers, enjoy our dhikr, and then actually enjoy our day. To say, this day was actually valuable. I was able to think about things that mattered to me. I thought about my family. I thought about my friends. I thought about my creator. Right? I thought about the world. I didn't just think about my work, and my school and all these other games that are distracting me. So,
Yeah, it's very common, just changing gears a little bit. It's very common. Parents are going to ask, you know what, my kids, they insist that we get him the new phone, the new iPad, the latest Nintendo or PlayStation or Netflix subscription or whatever it may be. So what advice do you have for those parents in terms of, should every single child have a computer in his room? Should every single family have a TV, a TV in every single bedroom? How often should a parent upgrade their own phones? How often should they upgrade their kids' phones? Do kids even need smartphones in the first place? What age do you actually need to have a smartphone? Help us with that.
So how many of the kids who are here, let's ask, who are under the age of 18 have a smartphone? So almost all of you. Is there anyone here who doesn't have a smartphone who's under 18? One person. Oh, no. They're much younger though.
No, zakah cannot be used to get your children smartphones, in case you were going to ask. I'm sorry.
And this comes up a lot. People often say, well, what are you telling us? Like, our kids need phones. Well, what do they need a phone for? For communication? Okay, they needed to call their parents to pick them up. They might need it to text messages or some messaging to be relayed. Does any of that require, and we kind of avoided this topic because of time. We didn't get into the dangers at all in terms of the actual things that the kids are exposed to. Well, if they use a smartphone, or if they use a laptop, or if they use a computer in their room. There's a lot of dangers that we're not going to get into right now. But no one can justify it, or hardly anyone can justify a youngster needing a data plan. You do not need it. And again, I'll talk about when you're an adult and you use these things, your brain is very, very different. It's already been developed. It's fundamentally changing the brain development when a kid is raised using that many hours a day. And you have to think about that. It's a serious issue that doesn't affect you, but it affects them. So if a child should have a phone, give him a dumb phone. That means a phone that doesn't have a data plan. It's a phone that just has a screen that allows you to type numbers on it. And it's much cheaper. It's going to save you $50 to $100 a month. And you get the job done. And if the kids, we cannot just give in that, every kid has it. Okay, every kid has it. Whoop-de-doo. You're not going to get one. There's other things that we're going to do for our kids, right? So at least for phones, it's not don't get them a phone at all, But the young kids don't need to have a smartphone.
So we're talking about straight up solutions
Yeah.
here. Does anyone want to debate this point? Can anyone make an argument that a teenager or someone, let's say someone who's under the age of 16, they actually need a smartphone or they need a data plan? Remember, this IIOC, we debate here. So you want to bring it up right now. We have Sheikh Uthman, he's ready to put it down. Any parents think that their kids, 16 or under, they actually do need a data plan or a smartphone? Let's start with parents. Any parents think that, you know what, yeah, they do need to get it? Parents first.
No, there's none.
Any parents? Okay. Anyone want to try? Anyone? Huh? Yeah, all the parents have it for the kids, and that's what we're criticizing right here. Yes, we're criticizing you too. So, because they wanted it, and their friends. No, why'd you do it, Nino? Come on, why'd you do it? Because all their friends have it, and because they put pressure on you to get it, so you got it. Any other reason in your mind that you got it? You thought maybe they're gonna use GPS one day. Not even one thing. See, Nino's honest. That's why we love him. Extremely honest, brutally honest.
Yeah. And again, parents to also think about that we have a responsibility before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as to how we raised our kids and what we allowed them to have. You would not allow your child to have things that would be, you wouldn't let your 5-year-old play with fire because you know he could burn himself. But essentially when you give a teenager a data plan, you're playing with fire. Because we all know what teenagers can do with data plans. Whether it's on purpose or it's on accident or their friends are using it, bad things are going to come out of it for sure. And at the end of the day, you're responsible. You are the adult. And Allah will ask us when the kids were under our, we were in our household, that why did you allow them to have these things? And there's no response. Nino said there's not a justification for it. It wasn't, I thought that they were going to get into a better college. I thought they were going to go to Princeton if I got them a Galaxy. No. So it's really about setting your own limits. And most of the educated non-Muslims, now a lot of them are also not doing this. Most of the professors that I know, they don't let their kids have smartphones because they know how bad it is. You know, Steve Jobs wouldn't allow his kids to play with an iPad. The person who ran Apple was like, I'd never let my kids touch this. Right? Yet we are the ones who are like, it's okay. Here you go. I want to go on a 5-hour car ride. Here's the iPad. Numb yourself. Right? Because we don't want to deal with any annoyances, right? That's what it comes down to. We don't want our kids to look out the window and maybe daydream. We don't want them to cry. What are we doing to our children? And then we wonder, and I'm not trying to make any scientific statements here, but we do have all these disorders now with attention deficit problem. Where are these coming from? There has to be something with our lifestyle that's causing these things. And I think this is the one point that I forgot to make, I'll make it now, is anytime there's technology, we should be very careful about being early adopters. Because we know in the history of humanity, how many things came out that we thought were good for us, that we realized after 20 or 30 years, this was actually super detrimental. Think about when asbestos came out. Those of you who know what asbestos is, right? Like, man, we realize this causes cancer. When pesticides came out, like, it's great, now we're not going to have any problems with our food. Now we realize that pesticides are horrible for our food. So many technological advancements we found out to be so much more detrimental than the value they might have had. And we don't know this right now about a lot. We're starting to find out about the phones and about the other gadgets out there. But it's going to be too late by then. You say, man, I've ruined a generation of children because I simply was blindly listening to what the people were telling me, to what Google was telling me. Do you think Google cares about your children? Does Apple care about your child's well-being? No, they don't. They care about making money off of you, and that's it. So be a little bit, you wouldn't trust a stranger, and these people are essentially worse than strangers.
Yes, a question in the back.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up in a few minutes, inshallah.
Sister.
Yeah.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate, but we use technology to become more efficient and to help us. And don't you think, as Muslims, we need to kind of stay ahead of the curve a little bit? We need to know everything that's going on. We don't want to fall behind.
Jazakumullah khair. So we spoke about this a little bit earlier. I don't know if you caught that, but The fundamental argument is that you're actually less efficient when you're continuously plugged in. And that's, again, not an opinion. This is it's been numerous studies have shown this. Whether you're a neuroscientist, you're a developmental scientist, they all agree that constant usage makes you less efficient, less creative, right, and less and a worse problem solver. So it doesn't help us. And the proof of that actually is you're going to find the most efficient people in society are not plugged into these things. And you can go and find out. Who are the most efficient people who are coming up with the latest and breaking ideas? They're not constantly doing these things every minute of the day. There's a time for it. So they give their time for thinking about their problems that they're working on, and they use the technology as a means of communication and doing what they need to do. But it's not like, Mark Zuckerberg is every 10 seconds checking his Facebook probably. He has to think about how he's going to make more money off of people, which is not going to be by checking every statement that comes up, right? Most, at least in academia, most academics who are producing research regularly are not using these things every single minute of the day. Most of them put time aside for it. When that time passes, the day is done, and they'll continue with it the next day. Which is why really, really busy, productive people don't get back to you immediately. It usually takes them a period of time to respond. Wallahu alam. So.
Keep in mind, this criticism of technology is a criticism of technology that's not actually essential for your work or essential for your life. We're not talking about getting rid of the cruise control in your car, right? We're not talking about, not having a smartphone if you work in a corporate environment where you actually need one. And it depends on which apps you have on your phone. So I want to make that very clear, because what's going to happen, and I'm telling you what's going to happen. Some people are going to leave this room, and they're going to be like, this is crazy, You guys talk about technology. These sheikhs are, what are they talking about? People, so many Muslims, they don't even know how to use computers. Are they telling us not to use computers anymore? Just in case people want to reduce our arguments to that, just remember again where we're coming from. Electrical engineering major, I'm a computer science major. We deal with technology on a regular basis. We know what's out there. We know what we're dealing with. We know how to use it, and we promote technology when it's needed. We promote technology which is going to support your core mission and your purpose and what you're actually trying to achieve. But people get sidetracked. People get sidetracked with the technology, and that's what we're critiquing. So let's make sure, just wanted to make sure everyone, when they leave with that understanding, is that that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and let me give an example of that just to show how it's being critical and just not being blind, a blind user. So they've done these extensive studies. Most of us nowadays don't. How many of us take notes by hand? How many college students are here? Raise your hand if you're in college. When you're in a lecture hall, do you take notes by hand or by a computer? Some of you do hand. How many of you use a computer to take your notes? A few of you, right? So one might imagine most of us, almost all youth, can type faster than they can write. It's just we've been wired that way now after 15 years of being raised on it. So it's more efficient to actually take notes on your computer. You can write down more and capture more of the content. Numerous studies now have all shown the difference in your comprehension and in your grades when you write by hand notes versus a computer are sky high, and that's when they control it so the computer can only take notes. So if you give someone a computer that can only take notes, only has a word processor, no internet, and then someone else writes it by paper, the one who writes it on paper, he scores way higher. Now imagine if that person now has Facebook on it and he's doing, you guys know, people who have laptops in class are hardly ever using it for schoolwork, right? So and you think about why. It really fundamentally has to do with when you slow down, you think differently. That's what they found out. They said the person who's typing things out, he's mindless. Whatever the teacher says, he's just typing. But when he has to write and he knows that I write slower, or she thinks that she knows she writes slower, she's going to say, I have to capture that which is important. I have to conceptualize it. I have to organize my thoughts. So whatever you write down, even if you don't go back to it, has more value. So again, we're not saying the computers are useless, but know when they're of value and know when they're not of value. No one is now saying, well, let's stop sending emails. Let's send it in snail mail. Put a stamp on everything and send it. No one's saying that. But again, having that ability to separate between when it's of value and when it's not of value really is what we're calling to.
I just wanted to make a comment. I was reading a study, or it was in a book by Malcolm Gladwell, and he was saying how most people wouldn't wish dyslexia on their kids, but when they did studies on them, they realized that it takes them slower to read something, that they're actually thinking about it instead of just reading through it quickly and like getting to the end of the page or like, going through notes or something. So when you're like reading more slowly, you have to think about it more. And so their comprehension is higher. So it like makes you think about what's an advantage and disadvantage.
Jazakumullah khair. Any other comments or questions? Sure.
At my job, when we have meetings, there's no laptop because there's like a study, they notice that if you bring your laptop, you're not concentrating on what the meeting is all about. So there's no laptop when we have meetings, and it actually works. We communicate and we talk and we get through it, and it's not like waste of time. So
At Twitter, when they have a meeting, they have to walk in and they have to deposit all their cell phones into a basket before they can get at the meeting table. So they even understood, even the ones who are in developing social media, they actually understood this problem as well.
I'll just tell a funny story, and I think we'll close with that. Just to show the level, parents need to be really concerned about how much kids they depend on this, and they literally can't live without it, and how dangerous that is. I don't know if anyone, Hussein is from Corona here. A few years ago, I took the Corona youth group, all the high school kids, about 80 of them, on a camping trip for 3 days in Big Bear. And I wanted it to be a weekend that they were not plugged in. So I didn't tell them. When we got to the campsite in Big Bear, I made every single kid take out their phone, and the cabin leader asked them to collect all their phones. These kids, it was for the majority of these kids who were between the age of 15 and 18, it was the first time they ever left their parents. None of them cried when they left their parents. When I took the phone, over half of them were crying. And I called them out on this in a lecture. I told the kids, I says, you guys, look at what you value in life. You left your parents, you didn't cry. Your phone was taken away for 48 hours, and you broke down and cried. I mean, it's astounding. And then we wonder, who created this monster? It's the parent. We've done it. We've done it ourselves. We have done it when we've chosen to give our children these tools when they're not developmentally at a stage that they can actually handle these type of devices. So
let's close with that thought. And I'm going to reiterate that thought one more time, is that parents come to us all the time and saying, you know what, this younger generation of kids, they're out of hand. They're completely out of control. We don't know what to do with them. And it comes back down to who's the one who provided all of these things in the first place without thinking, without assessing what effect this is really going to have. And as parents, you have a major responsibility, and you need to take that responsibility that you determine what's going to be coming inside the home. You determine what type of investments are going to be made. So make sure you utilize that responsibility in a responsible and proper way. Lastly, we have time changing. All right, we're going to add one more point. Let me just throw the announcement for prayer out, and then we're going to conclude with an even stronger point. And that is, time is going to be changing on Sunday, inshallah. Daylight savings is going to be starting. So the prayer times will be changing as well. Fajr will be at 6:15. Asr will be at 5:30. Isha will be at 9, except on Fridays. So Friday, Isha will be at 9:30. So we're going to start our program like normal at 8 o'clock, and it'll go until Isha, which will be at 9:30, inshallah. And I'll let Sheikh Uthman finish this program off with one great reminder.
Yeah, the last action item, and I purposely wanted it in the end, so no one, if you forgot everything we said, it's fine. 1 point for parents. Please, technology is good. It has the ability to do wonderful things for us. None of us would wish to live in the Stone Age. But especially with your children, please do not allow them, and the kids are going to hate this, do not allow a child to have a computer in his bedroom. This should not be allowed. Computers should always be in public spaces, in living rooms, in some neutral office. It has to be a place where parents and anyone can walk through. Again, otherwise you're playing with fire. And I know every parent says, not my innocent, wonderful kid would never dare of doing something. I'm telling you, sometimes it's on accident. Things pop up, people send emails, they get spam, stuff happens. So don't put your child in a position that he actually has to make this type of a moral decision. Right? Keep it safe. So keep that laptop or keep that computer always in a public space where that person can never have to be tempted by his nafs to do something which is inappropriate. And I think if we do that at least, then we'll save our kids from perhaps some of the greatest perils of technology. Wallahu a'lam. So we'll close inshallah with the dua, and if people want to talk, we can talk afterward. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who have the most meaningful relationships in our lives. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who enjoy every moment of our life, who enjoy our food, enjoy our friends, enjoy our parents, enjoy the beauty of His world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us of all our shortcomings and our mistakes. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us and to teach us how to use technology in the best of ways and to avoid all of its negative uses. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reunite us in Jannatul Firdaus, in the highest place in paradise, the way He has gathered us here today. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun al mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakum Allah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.